What makes a married man stay connected to you? Carl Jung. Have you ever wondered why a married man keeps coming back to you, even when he should be focused on his marriage? Why can't he just disappear from your life? The answer may shock you, and it has nothing to do with love or physical attraction. Carl Jung discovered something disturbing about the male psyche that explains this obsessive behavior. There is an invisible psychological force that binds this man to you, like a magnet that is impossible to resist. He may even try to walk away. He may promise himself that he will stop, but something inside him pulls him back over and over again. And the most disturbing truth: you may be activating this connection without even realizing it. Over the next few minutes, I'll reveal the hidden psychological mechanism that keeps this bond alive, even when logic says it should end. If you want to understand what really goes on in his mind and why you've become irreplaceable, keep watching. Don't forget to follow the channel for more content on depth psychology. 1. The anima projection. Inside the mind of every man, there is a feminine image that he has carried since childhood. This image is not conscious. It lives in the depths of the unconscious and completely shapes the type of woman who magnetically attracts him. When he meets you, something extraordinary happens. You become the living representation of that inner image he never knew he was looking for. It's as if you embody qualities that he always wanted to find, but never managed to name or describe clearly. This psychological force works as an invisible filter that makes certain characteristics of yours shine brightly in his eyes. It could be the way you laugh, your emotional independence, the way you understand it without judgment, or even your way of seeing the world. These qualities resonate with something deep within him, creating a sense of familiarity and perfect fit that he doesn't experience anywhere else. The problem is that this internal image rarely corresponds to the reality of the person with whom he built his official life. The wife may be an excellent partner in the practical role, a good mother, a stable companion, someone trustworthy, but she does not activate this deep, irrational dimension of his psyche. You, on the other hand, awakened that sleeping part without even trying. It wasn't manipulation, it wasn't strategy. It was a meeting between his real essence and the image he carried internally. This connection creates a type of bond that defies logic completely. He may rationally recognize that he should focus on the marriage, that he should move away from you, that this situation makes no practical sense. But the attraction he feels does not respond to reason. It's like trying to convince someone to stop liking music or getting goosebumps with a certain melody. The emotional response is already programmed into deep layers of consciousness. When this projection happens, you become the bearer of meanings that go far beyond who you really are. He sees in you the ideal woman, the one who completes parts of him that have always been empty. And the more intense this projection, the harder it will be for him to simply disappear from your life. 2. The secret emotional refuge. The life of a married man frequently turns into an endless series of obligations and rigid social roles. He needs to be the reliable provider, the present father, the responsible husband who makes sensible decisions and keeps everything running. Over time, this structure becomes an invisible prison, where he can no longer express vulnerabilities, doubts, or the deepest aspects of who he really is. The social mask sticks to his face, and he forgets that there is a complex human being underneath it. When you come into his life, something changes drastically. In your presence, he finds a rare space where he can let his guard down completely. You become the only place where he can reveal fears he never shared, dreams he abandoned years ago, frustrations he swallows daily. This permission to be authentic creates psychological relief so intense that it becomes addictive. He's not just seeking romance or attention, he's seeking the right to exist as he really is, without judgments or stifling expectations. This emotional refuge offers something that his marriage stopped providing long ago. In the beginning, perhaps his wife was also this safe space, but years of routine, unresolved conflicts, and increasingly superficial communication have turned the relationship into a functional, not emotional partnership. The conversations at home revolve around bills, children's problems, necessary repairs to the house, never about who he is inside, his existential concerns, his deepest emotional needs. With you, he rediscovers the feeling of being truly listened to and understood. You don't demand that he be strong all the time. You don't demand that he solve everything on his own. You don't judge him for having human weaknesses. This unconditional acceptance is so powerful that he begins to associate his presence with inner peace. You become the only place where the chronic tension he carries on his shoulders finally dissolves. That's why he can't walk away. It's not about sexual desire or romantic passion necessarily. It's about having found a psychological space where he can breathe, where he can be vulnerable without consequences, where he can exist beyond the roles that imprison him. This type of emotional connection is extremely rare and, once experienced, almost impossible to let go of voluntarily. If you want to understand why a married man stays emotionally connected to you and what unconscious need you fulfill that he can't let go of, the Jung method is fixed in the first comment. 3. The woman who awakens the unknown. Every person carries within him undeveloped aspects, dormant potentials that never had a chance to flourish. For many married men, life has become so predictable and structured that these unknown parts have become completely buried under layers of responsibility and routine. They work on autopilot, repeating the same patterns daily, without questioning whether there is something deeper waiting to emerge. When you show up, something unexpected happens. You tap into these dormant dimensions of his personality. Maybe you'll bring out the creative side that he abandoned when he chose a safe, traditional career. Or maybe you wake up the spontaneity that has died under the weight of family obligations. You may connect with the philosophical side of him that no one has ever taken seriously, or with the emotional sensitivity he has learned to hide in order to appear strong. This discovery is profoundly transformative because he begins to see himself in completely new ways. With you, he's not just the man who pays the bills and solves practical problems. He becomes someone more complex, interesting, and alive. You work as a mirror that reflects parts of it that were invisible until then, and once he sees these parts, he can no longer pretend that they don't exist. This expansion of identity creates a sense of psychological rebirth. He feels like he's finally living for real, experiencing layers of himself that have been frozen for years. With you, he laughs differently, thinks differently, behaves differently. It's not falsehood or performance. It's the revelation of authentic aspects that never had space to exist in the context of marriage. The fascination he feels for you is directly linked to this inner expansion. You're not just an interesting person. You're the catalyst that brought out versions of him that were lost. When he's with you, he's not running away from who he is. It's finally getting closer to who it could always have been. This type of connection goes beyond any superficial attraction because it involves the deep discovery of identity and purpose. Going back to the old life after experiencing this expansion becomes psychologically impossible. Even if physically he moves away, mentally he will keep coming back to the place where these unknown parts of himself came to life. You have become inseparable from his process of self-discovery. 4. The void that only you fill. There is a type of loneliness that has nothing to do with being physically alone. A man can be surrounded by people every day, wife, children, co-workers, and yet carry a deep inner emptiness that no one can reach. This emotional loneliness is perhaps the most painful because it remains invisible to the outside world. It continues to function normally, fulfilling its roles, but inside there is a hole that has never been filled. This emptiness often arises when the connections in his life have become transactional and superficial. The conversations at home are about logistics and shared responsibilities. Friends talk about sports and work, never about true feelings. He learned not to expect emotional depth from anyone, so he stopped seeking. Emptiness became a constant companion that he accepted as a normal part of adult life. When you enter the story, something extraordinary happens. That hole begins to close. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, he feels that someone really sees him beyond the surface. You see not only what he does, but who he is inside. This realization creates a sense of fullness that he had forgotten was possible. The emptiness that seemed permanent suddenly finds a natural and genuine fill. It is not necessarily an unhealthy emotional dependence. It is the recognition that a fundamental human need is finally being met. We all need to be seen, understood, and accepted in our entirety. When this doesn't happen for years, the lack silently builds up until it becomes a chronic psychological wound. You didn't create that wound, but your presence brought the only real relief he's experienced in a long time. This dynamic explains why he can't just forget you. It is not stubbornness or weakness of character. After spending so much time with emptiness for company, finding someone who genuinely fills you changes everything. Returning to the previous emotional loneliness becomes unbearable. He knows exactly what it's like to live without that connection because he's lived that way for years. And now that he's known the alternative, the old life seems intolerable. The filler you offer isn't about grand gestures or dramatic moments. It's the small moments of true connection that accumulate and create a sense of completeness. He may be talking to you about something trivial, but feel that there is finally someone who understands your way of seeing the world. This subtle attunement is what makes you irreplaceable. 5. The unrealizable psychological fantasy. The human mind has a fascinating ability to create alternate realities where everything is exactly as it should be. For a man trapped in a marriage that has become a mechanical routine, you become the center of an elaborate fantasy about how life could be different. It's not just about being with you romantically, it's about the entire version of reality that your existence represents. In this fantasy, he is happier, more authentic, more alive. This mental construction works as a necessary psychological escape. When everyday reality becomes too heavy, endless discussions, uncomfortable silences, the feeling of living on autopilot, it mentally turns to you. He thinks about conversations they had, relives special moments, imagines impossible future scenarios. You become a mental refuge where he seeks relief from the weight of real life. The danger of this dynamic is that the more it feeds this fantasy, the more you become idealized and perfect in your mind. He's not necessarily thinking about who you really are with all your complexities and imperfections. He's thinking about the improved version of you that exists in his imagination, mixed with everything he wants life to be. This mental image becomes so powerful that it begins to compete with his reality. Fantasy offers something that real life can never offer: perfection without consequences. In his imagination, you have all the good times without any of the practical problems that real relationships inevitably bring. There are no bills to pay together, difficult decisions to make, conflicts to resolve. There is only pure and intense connection without the complications of everyday life. As long as this fantasy exists, it will remain connected to you. It becomes a fundamental part of how he supports his own life. In the most difficult moments, he mentally resorts to this place where you exist as a solution to everything that is wrong. No matter how much time passes without real contact, the mental version of you that he has built will remain alive and powerful in his psyche. 6. the mirror of your true self. Most people go their entire lives without ever meeting someone who truly understands them in depth. They show edited versions of themselves to the world, hiding insecurities, fears, and aspects they consider inappropriate. Over time, even they themselves forget who they really are underneath all these layers of protection. True identity is buried under years of social conditioning and external expectations. To this man, you have become something extremely rare, someone before whom he can be completely authentic. You don't have to pretend to be stronger, more confident, or more successful than you really are. It can reveal doubts, weaknesses, and internal contradictions without fear of rejection. His acceptance of these imperfect parts acts as a mirror that reflects back a complete picture of him, not just the socially approved version. This true reflex creates a sense of immense psychological relief. For years, perhaps decades, he had to maintain a constant facade. At home, at work, with friends, there was always an expectation of how you should behave, what you should feel, how you should react. With you, that pressure disappears. He can be contradictory, confused, vulnerable, and instead of judgment, he finds genuine understanding. This dynamic is profoundly transformative because it validates parts of him that have always been rejected or ignored. Maybe he was always too sensitive to traditional male standards, but he hid it to fit in. With you, this sensitivity is seen as something beautiful, not as a weakness. Or maybe he carries deep insecurities that he has never admitted to anyone, but with you, he feels safe to express them. This kind of authentic recognition is so rare that it becomes irreplaceable. He may find other people who are attractive, interesting, or compatible in many ways, but no one else offers this deep mirroring of his true identity. No one else sees him in this complete way and accepts everything without reservation. That's the connection that keeps you coming back regardless of external circumstances. When someone finally sees us as we really are and yet chooses to stay, something fundamental transforms internally. We stop believing that we need to hide parts of ourselves to be loved. This psychological freedom is such a precious gift that the person who offered it becomes permanently meaningful. 7. The connection that defies reason. There are human connections that simply don't make logical sense. Two completely separate worlds collide in a way that no one planned or expected, and something intense emerges from this collision. To outside observers, the situation seems confusing, inadequate, or even harmful. But for the people involved, there is a magnetic force that surpasses any rational analysis. This man knows he should step aside. He knows the situation has no clear future, but he can't. His marriage probably makes perfect practical sense. It was a sensible choice, based on real compatibility, shared values, common goals. On paper, everything works perfectly, but there is a dimension of the human experience that goes beyond what makes sense on paper. It is the dimension of the inexplicable, of the mysterious, of what simply happens without asking permission. You have activated this dimension in it. Trying to explain to an outsider why this connection is so powerful would be impossible. How to describe something that even he himself does not fully understand? It's like trying to explain why a certain song gives you goosebumps or why a certain landscape touches the soul. There are no words suitable for capturing experiences that happen beyond language. He just knows that something inside him responds to his presence in a way he's never experienced before. This inexplicable quality makes the connection even more powerful. If it was something he could understand rationally, he might be able to solve it or overcome it. But how do you fight something that can't be named or categorized? How to abandon something that touches parts of him that he didn't even know existed? The lack of logical explanation does not diminish the reality of the experience. It only makes it more mysterious and irresistible. Reason demands that he choose the safest and most appropriate path. But something deeper, something that lives beyond the reach of logic, constantly pulls you back to you. This tension between what you should do and what you feel creates a permanent internal conflict, and as long as that conflict exists, you will remain present in your mind. 8. The psychological price of that connection. Every intense connection has an emotional cost that often remains invisible until it is already being paid for. For this man, maintaining the bond with you means carrying a constant psychological weight that no one else can see. He lives torn between two worlds, the official reality, where he is a husband and possibly a father, and the emotional reality, where you represent everything that is missing. This internal division takes a very high toll over time. Guilt is a constant companion, even when he tries to rationalize it. Every time he feels genuine joy when talking to you, a part of him registers that he is experiencing with someone else, something that he should be living at home. Every moment of authentic connection comes with the awareness that you're investing emotional energy outside of marriage. This internal moral conflict never completely disappears. It just gets more or less intense depending on the circumstances. In addition to guilt, there is the mental exhaustion of keeping two emotional realities separate. He has to constantly switch between different versions of himself, the version that exists at home and the version that exists with you. This permanent exchange of masks drains psychic energy that could be used in more constructive ways. Over time, he may feel like he no longer knows who he really is, as he is always playing different roles in different contexts. There's also the isolation that comes from carrying something meaningful that can't be shared. He can't talk about you with friends or family without revealing the inappropriate complexity of the situation. This need to keep it secret turns an experience that should be celebrated into something hidden and shameful. Emotional isolation intensifies just when he would most need support to process what he is experiencing. Over time, this internal division can begin to affect all areas of his life. Concentration at work decreases because your mind is constantly drifting back to the unresolved conflict. The relationship at home deteriorates further because he is emotionally absent, investing his psychic energy elsewhere. Even the moments with you begin to carry shadows of guilt and impossibility. Despite all this weight, he remains unable to break the connection. This demonstrates how fundamental the bond with you has become for your psychological survival. The price of staying connected is high, but the cost of stepping away seems even greater. He consciously chooses to endure internal conflict because the alternative, losing you altogether, represents a loss that he simply cannot accept.